Hello, world. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Wednesday, the epicenter of yet another very, very busy broadcast week. It is June 10th, and this is the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live on Rumble, live on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV. We are live on Substack, live on YouTube, and of course, live on TikTok. Hey, to our TikTok audience, they are watching from behind the scenes from my phone. It's great to be with all of you today. As you know, it's the news every day, not left, not right, just the truth, straight up, no chaser, news, culture, politics every day. I'm just a girl, just like you, white-knuckled, on this roller coaster along with all of you, the roller coaster that is the insane 24-hour news cycle, which is only accelerated every year in the 13 years that I have been broadcasting the Shannon Joy Show. It just gets faster and faster and more insane and more absurd every single day. And you see the headline today on today's show, the United States of political cults. How to break out and be free, a big discussion with one of my good friends, Dr. Joe Sansone. He's going to be with us in just a minute. And we need a psychologist these days. He's a psychotherapist. He specializes in hypnosis. And I think I need a session on the couch with Dr. Joe Sansone because everything is crazy. Everything is crazy. They're fixing. I mean, just think about how nuts the news cycle is today. They are fixing to have a cage match on the lawn of the White House, okay, in Washington, D.C., for the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. A cage match. Like, what's next? Like, cockfighting? I mean, why don't they just, I don't know, string up colored lights all year round on the White House and plop a sofa on the front porch? I mean, it's the dumbest time in human history I think we've ever lived in. It's idiocracy. I don't know if you have seen that movie / kind of documentary when you think about it, but we truly are in an idiocracy. And one of the reasons that things are so crazy, the reasons that our leaders are so brazen and absurd is that we have been divided, separated into all sorts of factions, but primarily the D versus R, left versus right political cults. And so this is why I think it's really important that we have this discussion today. Lindsey Graham just won in South Carolina. Massey gets primaried, okay? The most popular sitting U.S. congressman in the country gets primaried in Kentucky and loses after they dump, $25 million on his tiny little district. And Lindsey Graham, the most loathsome sitting senator, wins his primary by like 10 points. Like, what are they doing in South Carolina? I don't know, but it is just all so absurd. Gaelic Monkey, great to see you on the Rumble live chat. The White House looks like a brothel, par for the course. It's insane. A cage match on the front lawn of the White House in Washington, D.C. This is the United States government. This is what we have circa 2026. This is why we need a revolution. I think it would be great. 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America and the ratification of our Constitution. I think it's time maybe that we have a revolution. Peaceful, of course. Civil disobedience, peaceful noncompliance, strikes, tax strikes, boycotts, sit-ins, walk-ins, whatever, everything but the kitchen sink. We just need to stop complying. Americans need to get riled up, because it's ridiculous. A cage match on the front lawn of the White House. It's crazy. It's crazy. Mama C 1996, great to see you. But who else do we have here? Chronozone 777, great to see you as well. We're glad to be here live on the Rumble live chat. If you're watching on any of our platforms, it really helps us out when you give this show a thumbs up, a follow, a like, a share, and especially a comment. Join those live chats. I'm going to be keeping an eye on them all day. We are growing super fast on Substack and YouTube, also on TikTok. And of course, I love reading the chats from the chats from the Rumble chat. Future Ez, great to see you on the live chat. Future Ez says this: I cannot believe that Lindsey Graham overwhelmingly won the Republican primary. Can't wrap my head around it. Are Republicans in South Carolina that brain dead? Well, they're in a cult. They're in the MAGA cult, and they do what the cult leader tells them to do, and that's Trump. This is why we have Dr. Joe Sansone on the show today, because he knows all about cults. In fact, he wrote the book on it, Psychopathic Authoritarianism, a Disease of the Soul, and a recent piece that is linked in the show notes of today's show that everyone needs to download and read, print it out, Mass Media Facilitated Political Cults. I was talking with Joe last week, and there are a variety of topics that we could touch on. He is an amazing medical freedom warrior from the state of Florida. I recently met him face-to-face for the first time in the Netherlands as we reported on the Dutch case against Albert Bourla and Bill Gates, crimes against humanity involving the rollout of the poison shot. And so that was just a couple months ago. But as I talked to Joe earlier this week, I said, listen, I would really like to focus in on cults, primarily political cults and authoritarian tyrants and cult leaders, and how they can get nations of people, massive populations of people through mass media to turn off their brains and become brain dead and go to the voting booths in South Carolina and actually pull a lever for Lindsey freaking Graham. Like cuckoo. But that's what cultists do. So Future Ez, it's the perfect question, and we have the perfect guest for you today on the Shannon Joy Show. So make sure, guys, you are liking, you are giving this show a thumbs up. It increases the viewer counts by 50, sometimes 100 people throughout the course of the show. So it really, really helps. And it also helps us to grow. Let's take a look at the Rumble live chat. I want to say hello to a couple more of you. We're going to bring Dr. Joe Sansone in just about 5 minutes, and then he's going to spend a full hour with us, 5 to 7 minutes. I do have some headlines I want to go over and some key stories that are linked in the show notes of today's show that we're going to briefly look at, namely Tom Massey's unbelievable 5-minute speech on the floor of the House of Representatives the day before yesterday on behalf of the survivors of the USS Liberty. This is a story that I've heard about on the periphery for many, many years, but I never dove into. Huge thank you to Thomas Massey for giving this story so much oxygen and telling the story of the survivors and the eyewitnesses of what actually happened in 1967. So I have an overview on that we're going to look at. Very important. Tom Massey not wasting his time, his remaining 7 months as a sitting member of the United States House of Representatives. He may have lost his primary, but he's going to go down swinging, and he's going to go down standing for truth. And this speech that he gave on behalf of those survivors and eyewitnesses, the atrocities that were committed against U.S. servicemen in 1967 by the Israeli government, astounding. He is a treasure, and he is doing an amazing service for this country. So Tom Massey, we're going to go over that story in just a moment. And then also bad news when it comes to inflation and Social Security. We have Ed Dowd coming in. He'll be live on Friday here in the Shannon Joy Show, full hour on the economic disaster, the financial disaster that is heading our way. He is not mincing words, and we're going to have him for a full hour on all of those topics. But I do want to say hello to all of you on Rumble. Make sure you are hitting that thumbs up button. Hey, Ralph the Flying Dutchman, great to see you. Hey, Future Ez, great to see you. Ollie Robin 9 is with us. Mama C 1996. I have friends in South Carolina, They don't vote for Lindsey Graham and cannot figure out how he wins. Neither can I. I think we might be post-electoral here in the United States of America, which is why I advocate local organization and resisting from the bottom up everything. I have a great video actually linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show of Americans now taking down and waging war against those flock machines, the surveillance system set up in the US. And it's great. I mean, we're going to have to rage against the data centers, rage against the flock cameras, rage against the digital ID and the digital currency as they try to move us into this police surveillance state. Techno-fascism is my term for it. And yeah, everything but the kitchen sink. Hey, Lou Melcom, great to see you on the live chat. Trust the Secret Squirrel Plan, good to see you on the live chat. It's amazing. Gaelic Monkey, as I mentioned, and KC12112. Good to see you as well. All right, so we are going to, before we go to commercial break, we are going to look at a couple headlines, and then we're going to bring Dr. Joe Sansone in for the remainder of the Shannon Joy Show. I want to start with the USS Liberty and the revelation that Thomas Massie has now popularized. He's brought a ton of attention to this story, the 1967 attack on the USS Liberty by Israel. This has been shoved under the rug. The story has been suppressed. It's been manipulated. There's been a concerted effort to cast this story as simply a friendly fire, a tragic friendly fire situation. The testimonies and the eyewitness testimony of the men who were on the boat when it happened, the living survivors, contradicts what the mainstream news media and right-wing news media are trying to push out regarding the USS Liberty. And so this is an important story, number one, because there are survivors and there are eyewitnesses. And we do not have to let this story die in darkness. And I think that is what Thomas Massie accomplished on the floor of the House of Representatives just a couple days ago. They're all telling the same story, and it's not Ben Shapiro's story. Ben Shapiro has been one of the leading storytellers about what really happened in 1967 regarding the USS Liberty. And they are pushing out the narrative that it was friendly fire. Oopsie, it was just a mistake. They didn't know. It was tragic. But, you know, these things happen, and they happen regularly, and they happen during the Vietnam War, all major wars, sometimes the United States of America, friendly fires on their own people, right? And so that's the narrative. But when you hear their testimonies, it's absolutely stunning. And because there are eyewitnesses, I think there need to be investigations. Many have said that there have been investigations into this. The witnesses and the survivors say that there have not been any congressional investigations or meaningful investigations into what happened on that horrible, horrible day. So there's been a massive effort to cover this up and deceive people into thinking it was friendly fire. And as I mentioned, the survivors and the witnesses who have been organizing for many, many years to keep this story alive, to keep the truth out there, finally had a voice in Congress. And that voice was Thomas Massie. God bless him, by the way. I mean, he does mean to make every minute of his remaining time in Washington, D.C. count for truth and justice, and that's what he did. I had, heard about the USS Liberty, as I mentioned. I've seen it mentioned on my chats, but I've never looked into the story, and I apologize to all of you for that. There's so many insane stories out there, so many insane conspiracies out there. There's so much out there that there's only enough time in the day to cover as many as I can. And I vet all my own stories. I research all my own topics. I don't have a team of, producers and copywriters and, people who help me do this. It's all on my own. So there's just only so much time, but I can't believe that I hadn't heard this story. This does show the power of the bully pulpit. Every congressman and woman or senator could do this, these types of things using their bully pulpit, but they don't. Unfortunately, we only have Thomas Massie, but some of the revelations here were just unbelievable. The witnesses and the survivors say that there's no way this was a mistaken identity or a friendly fire by accident. In fact, they report that the Israeli jets flew so close to the USS Liberty, which was flying an enormous flag. But the jets, when they were originally surveilling, flew so close that the pilots and the men on the USS Liberty waved to each other and could see each other. So they knew that this was a US ship. And they came back after that surveillance and shocking the crew members, basically pummeled them for 2 straight days from the air, from the water. They dropped napalm on some of the crew members who had escaped into a lifeboat trying to get to safety. The Israeli jets bombed them, killed them. That's actually a violation of international standards. It's an international war crime to blow a lifeboat full of escaping servicemen out of the water. Amazingly, this was shocking. One of the witnesses and survivors said that, first and foremost, that they believe that they were sent in on purpose by President LBJ as sacrificial lambs for a false flag event to draw the United States of America into the 6-Day War. So they assert that they believe that LBJ was colluding with the Israeli government to essentially sacrifice an entire boat and U.S. military servicemen in order to get the United States involved in that war. And that's their story, and they're sticking to it. They said that LBJ knew about it. He sent them alone into that location and denied their two requests for destroyer escorts before the attack happened. These men, there were 34 dead, 170 injured. They called for help. They were denied twice, and they had to sit in the dark and waiting, injured, for 17 hours before they were rescued. And they believe that the boat was supposed to go down, that they were all supposed to die. And so I want to suggest and recommend, I linked in the show notes the 5-minute speech that Thomas Massie presented on the House of the United States Congress, but he also did a press conference with the eyewitnesses and survivors and also welcomed them into his congressional office. This is horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And I think that because the government gets away with these type of things over and over and the truth doesn't ever come out, this emboldens them. And it's probably why we've dealt with what many believe are multiple false flag operations throughout the past 20, 30, 40 years in this country that inflict trauma on this nation. And trauma is a key component of the formation of cults, I believe. I believe that traumatized people are much more susceptible to the manipulations of a cult leader and the cults, especially in the era of mass media repetition. We're going to talk with Dr. Joe Sansone about that. But huge thank you to Thomas Massie for his stalwart defense of truth. And I'm going to look forward to looking into, I'd love to have one of those survivors on the Shannon Joy Show. And so I'm going to work on making that happen, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And of course, we'll have Thomas Massie on the program again to talk about everything that he plans on doing in the next 7 months. Because if this is a foreshadowing of the Thomas Massie that we're going to be treated to over the next 7 months, his last 7 months as a U.S. sitting congressman, man, we're in for a treat. I think we're going to see a lot of truths. So thank you to Thomas Massie. All right, we're going to go to commercial break in just a moment. When we come back, without further ado, we are going to bring in Dr. Joe Sansone for the remainder of the show to talk about his new book and also the rise of political cults in the United States of America and cult leaders. So his book is Psychopathic Authoritarianism, A Disease of the Soul. And his Substack, which is linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show, is Mass Media Facilitated Political Cults. He is going to break down for us how mainstream media and propaganda machines manufacture dangerous political cults and personality cults that thrive on cognitive dissonance, fear, identity politics, and blind devotion. We need to escape from the cults. We need to exit the false uniparty political system. We need to know the truth, that the D's and the R's are on the same team, that Donald Trump is the same for all intents and purposes when it comes to discernible policy outcome as Joe Biden. Okay. So this is a big lift here in the United States of America, but we're going to talk about that with Dr. Joe Sansone, among other things as well. So before we go to breakthrough, I also want to talk about parasites. As you guys know, the Wellness Company is a sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. And parasites could be impacting millions upon millions of Americans, and they don't even know it. These nasty, microscopic little invaders can drain your energy, fog your brain, mess with your digestion, and leave you just feeling off, not good. And with everything coming across the border, everything they're dumping on us from the skies, everything that they're spraying on our food and putting in our water, you just never know what you are subjected to. This is why, of course, I'm thrilled to partner up with the Wellness Company and their dual action parasite cleanse. This is the gold standard prescription formula combining ivermectin and mebendazole. This is not some herbal gimmick. It is doctor formulated, prescription strength, fast acting, and this is designed to target parasites head on. Many of the docs recommend that every American do a parasite cleanse every year or so to make sure that everything is working properly. And TWC's dual action parasite cleanse gives you 90 capsules, a complete course at a great price, guided by their licensed providers. It's safe, effective. It is backed by the kind of doctors who actually put patients first. Doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and more. So if you're tired of unexplained fatigue, bloating, or you're just not feeling your best, it might be parasites. Go to twc.health/joy right now. That's twc.health/joy right now. Use that promo code JOY for 60% off and free shipping. Of course, we're very thankful for our friends over at the Wellness Company. Okay, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, Joe Sansone today on the Shannon Joy Show. Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment to thank one of my longtime friends at 123.com/joy. At 123.com/joy. Everything that you're going to need for preparation: generators, solar panels, Faraday products. If you want to disappear and protect yourself from the surveillance state, they have an entire line of amazing Faraday products called dark bags. They're always 10% off at the satellite phone store if you go to sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. The satellite phone store has supported the Shannon Joy Show for many years. They are amazing partners, and let's help the companies that help keep the lights on here at the Shannon Joy Show. So if you are in the market for any of their products or services, make sure you use that promo code JOY and go to sat123.com/joy. That's sat123.com/joy. Hey everyone, I am so proud to recommend Schiff Gold to this audience as the gold standard for metals purchasing and investing. I couldn't ask for a better partner to help people understand gold and silver and use them as strategic instruments to protect their family's financial future. Peter Schiff's teaching on markets has shaped my understanding of how economies grow and why they collapse. And I've used him as a critical source for my daily broadcast for over 10 years. The Shannon Joy Show audience already knows and loves Peter because he has been such a treasured educator over the years. He is now the preeminent source for rock-solid financial analysis around the world. And this is because he understands the immutable laws of natural markets and his stalwart unwillingness to veer from absolute truths regardless of economic fads and political pressures. Bottom line, he doesn't sell out. And that means a lot to me. I trust Shift Gold, and you can too. Go to shiftgold.com/joy today to get started. You'll find some of the lowest spot prices for gold and silver and critical information on protecting your retirement savings with a gold or silver IRA. That's www.shiftgold.com/joy. Hedge against the chaos with our friends over at Shift Gold. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And please remember the sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show, the wellness company, Shift Gold. We love the folks over at the Satellite Phone Store. And of course, PCM and Associates. That's Don Polano, my financial advisor. This is how we keep the lights on here in the Shannon Joy Show. So if you are in the market for any of their products or services, it always helps to patronize those sponsors. So, Fez Woody, great to see you on the live chat. Coronazone 777, good to see you as well. Hey, Max Glickman, good to see you. And we have a big audience and a growing audience over at TikTok, of course, on X as well. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome in, he's been waiting very patiently in the warm-up room, Dr. Joe Sansone is with us today on the Shannon Joy Show to talk about political cults. Dr. Joe Sansone is a licensed psychotherapist. He specializes in clinical hypnosis and wrote the book, Psychopathic Authoritarianism, A Disease of the Soul. He was a medical freedom warrior, a regular on the Shannon Joy Show. He's an expert on the modern day psychological operations that are shaping our minds, our culture, and our world. You can follow him on his Substack. It is Mind, Matter, and Everything Else with Dr. Joe Sansone. And he is also an expert witness for that very important case in the Netherlands. In fact, Joe, that's where we first met for the first time face-to-face in the Netherlands, of all places. You were testifying as an expert witness in the case against Albert Bourla, Bill Gates, and Dutch officials in terms of crimes against humanity in the rollout and the deployment of the countermeasure, the bioweapon, which was the COVID shots. But you've been doing amazing work there. How are you doing, Dr. Joe?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Shannon. It was great. Yeah, it was great to meet you in person there. She was having a bad hair week, so she had a hat on the whole time. But
the whole time.
The whole time, yeah. It was funny. But yeah, no, it was good to see you. It was good to see Sasha. She's, Sasha's all hard, but, in person, she's like warm and cuddly like a little teddy bear.
Sasha Latapova is a warm and cuddly teddy bear. Yeah, she is a warrior and absolutely brilliant, regular on the Shannon Joy Show. She was also an expert witness at that trial. And, the problem, Dr. Joe, was that
we were in coach.
Well, no. See, he's outing me on my beanie. I was having a First of all, it's a 16-hour trip to get to Netherlands from New York State. So,
but Shannon, you did witness one thing. You watched me opt out of the biometric security.
Absolutely. It was amazing. I opt out. I never let TSA or the screeners in the US scan my face. But I thought that it was mandatory in the Netherlands. And apparently it wasn't. You got away with it. I thought that you were going to get, I thought they were the Customs and Border Enforcement was going to take you. I didn't have the balls to do that. Dr. Joe had the balls to do that. I was like, I got to get home,
Yeah. So I opted out of that. That was good.
Yeah.
So, we had a lot going on there. Even some of the topics you were covering in your intro, some of those serious topics. I'm glad that Representative Massey spoke out on the anniversary for the USS Liberty, because that's something I've known about since the early '90s. In fact, who had Candace Owens had one of the survivors on it. He went into great detail on what you were talking about several months back, and it's if you imagine being like on there and you were attacked and nobody even acknowledges it for all these years,
horrifying.
Yeah, it really
horrifying.
is.
You know, and when you see their testimonies and the interactions between the survivors and Tom Massey, and he was so respectful of them, he welcomed them into his office before he gave his 5-minute speech and literally asked them, you know, what do you need me to say? We have 5 minutes. What is the most important thing to all of you? And they just gave him a lot of feedback, and just to see how passionate they were and how traumatic that event was, and even further trauma, the gaslighting by our own US government officials, shoving this under the rug, telling the American people lies about it, denying them their own eyewitness testimony about what happened. It's even more horrifying than the attack itself, right? When you can't get that justice. Go ahead.
And within the context of what we're, oh, by the way, I should say my book, Psychopathic Authoritarianism, A Disease of the Soul,
Yeah.
It should be available for pre-order on August 1st. And then I'm publishing it on September 11th, 2026, to protest 25 years of tyranny. The book is not about 9/11, although I mention it, but it's more about the patterns of psychopathic authoritarianism. But so, a little bit what you're talking about there with the Liberty attack does kind of tie into why you have me on today, because there's a lot of coercion about that, because anybody over the last 40 years or that I'm aware of that ever spoke out about on that topic was immediately labeled anti-Semitic. That is a coercion tactic to silence people. You should be able to discuss issues without being called names like that. And that has been happening for decades, like literally. And so that is kind of cult-like behavior within that segment. So where do you want to go with these political cults?
Well, yeah, so let's get started, because a lot of the topics of the day and the news of the day that we are discussing is directly tied to, my theory that the United States of America is dominated predominantly by two political cults, the cult of the left and the cult of the right. And cult leaders, some are more charismatic than others. Some are more effective than others. I think that Donald Trump might be the most effective cult leader in the history of the world. I have never seen a command on so many people using Donald Trump and the tactics and techniques of a totalitarian, but also coupling that with mass media and other techniques. I've just never seen anything like it. I thought that the COVID lockdowns and the zombies who were wearing 17 masks on their faces and standing 6 feet apart from each other and locking themselves in their homes and injecting themselves with poison, I thought that was the epitome of cult-like behavior and mass formation. This latest round of Donald Trump's presidency and the fact that so many are still sticking with him as he completely betrays them on every topic, every issue, is just astounding to me. But what I would like to do, I'd like to go through this kind of systematically and just kind of identify, how these cults are formed, who is susceptible to these cults, the tactics and the techniques of those leaders who are leading the cults, and why it's so damaging to our nation, our culture, and our society. And then towards the end, Dr. Joe, I would like to look at how to avoid cults, how to not get involved in cults, how people can be informed and empowered to stay out of these types of political cults, or any cults for that matter. And then, kind of go from there. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of the overview. How does that sound to you?
That works. So tell me where to start.
All right. Well, let's talk about how they're built. What is your sense? How did we get here? How do we end up with a cage match on the front lawn of the United States of the White House in the US government, and people are just like, this is just another day in 2026. Like, it's just insane.
So you referenced Idiocracy, which we apparently know now was a documentary, not a fiction film. Right. But in that film, like, it was Brondo, which was their version of like Gatorade, and they used it on everything because everything was so commercialized. They had biometric IDs and all that stuff. But, the saying was, Brondo, it's what plants crave. And, because everybody thought the guy that was, went through time. Everybody thought he was like nuts because he wanted to water the plants, like use water instead of
Right.
condone. They didn't know why they're having the famine. But the
Right.
president, like he'd have his machine gun, and they had like the monster truck rallies at the White House. And it's just there is a pattern similarity here. Now,
Right.
maybe if Biden or Kamala Harris were elected, we'd have transvestite mud wrestling. So there'd be something else weird going on. It would just be a different thing. But
Yeah.
how do we get here? I think a lot of it is just the pervasiveness of mass media. So the political cults, at least here in America, they're not using coercion. They're just propagandizing people to such an extreme that they don't even realize they're not thinking for themselves.
Right.
And you know, mass media is so pervasive. Like for instance, now like a lot of these shows on the streaming and that type of thing are really woke. Even like I was watching an episode of Your Friends and Neighbors, which is a totally off the wall show.
Okay.
They always mix in like woke messages, like a very anti-white message in every script. Like it's in the scripting, very definitely anti-Christian. So a lot of these shows embed it. Go back to when you were younger. Remember the original Superman, and they had like at the kitchen table, and they have like I forget if it was Wheaties or Cheerios, but they had the box of cereal there, and that was like an indirect suggestion to associate that product with that feeling of family. Now,
Right.
politicians do this all the time. It's almost cliche with the American flag behind them. So it's like associating that feeling of patriotism with that politician. So there's a lot of indirect hypnotic suggestion that occurs.
Can you talk about that? Let's talk
Yeah.
about indirect hypnotic suggestion that is embedded in mass media on the left and the right. We
Mhm.
mentioned idiocracy, elements of predictive programming, kind of it basically butters us up or kind of acclimates us to
Yeah.
a coming dystopian reality by pummeling us with it. And it's, you know, it's something that I've noticed. But can you talk about why is indirect suggestion more powerful than, you know, direct suggestion? Like, why is that such a powerful tool?
I don't want to say it's more powerful, but it can be more powerful.
Mhm.
And the reason is like, say, if you came to me for a clinical hypnosis suggestion session, I give you both direct and indirect suggestions. But you know, a direct suggestion you can resist. An indirect suggestion you can resist, but you often don't consciously resist it because you're not aware that it's happening.
Right.
And so go back to like some of those classic books, like The Grapes of Wrath and things like that. Those were well done books, but they indirectly had like a socialist Marxist message embedded into those. The thing is now they've become a little less sophisticated, or at least for a lot of us, we see it and we're like, what? You're ruining the movie because you're pushing your political ideas so strongly on me. But so indirect suggestions can be embedded in the metaphors that you're using. They can be verbal as well, but the power to them is your conscious resistance isn't there.
Mhm.
It's like through association. Does that make sense how I'm saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's why you've got now, you know, think of when you were a kid, you probably remember the jingles to like Gilligan's Island's reruns or something like that. Imagine how pervasive the media is today on young people growing up.
Mm.
And even people, you know, in their 20s and 30s have had so much programming through TV, video games, internet, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. They've got so many programs now where it's just a given that there's cameras following you everywhere you're going. And that's what we're
Right.
looking at here. And this is where you call these people out, because how many politicians have you seen put forth legislation in your state to get rid of all the cameras?
Absolutely none. I
None.
mean, none.
None.
And
None aware of anywhere.
it's very interesting because as a society, we have become so acclimated to constant total surveillance and cameras that now, as they're rolling them out, I pushed out on Twitter yesterday, McDonald's is now looking to roll out biometric facial scanning for all of their customers and license plate readers on every car that goes through their drive-through so that they can collect information on you, your orders, what you like, what you don't like when you come. And they say that's going to enhance the customer experience at McDonald's. But you see this at the grocery store, at Target, at some of the major retailers. They are scanning your face from the moment you walk in. Walmart is reading license plates, that was recently reported. And all of this would have been resisted. Many Americans would have resisted this if they had not been so acclimated to these dystopian movies and just the normalization of constant surveillance. And so now we just kind of accept it when we really should be raging against it.
And I don't know if you remember a few months back, they were trying to pass that Stasi bill in Florida where they're actually using, I think it was Celebrite, an Israeli intelligence company, was going to be doing that. They were the main lobbyists for this bill. And it did not pass. It got stalled in committee, but certain elements of it did pass. But this bill was going to create like a paramilitary force. But part of what they were going to do was they were going to basically do what you're talking about, take all that data and do kind of predictive, if you're perceived as a threat, then they would drill in and surveil you more. So it's like that data is being used by the government too. Nobody is securing that data. They're either sharing with the government or the government's just taking it, because every communication that we have that's electronic, the NSA is storing it anyway. So this data is all being used against us. And so we do have to fight back. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I'll get back to the cult thing in a second, but you mentioned early on about the AI database centers. There's a certain inevitability of what's going to happen here. I can tell you right now what's going to happen within the next few years. Those database centers, the AI database centers, are going to be targeted with drones attacks by American citizens here in the United States. Because look at what happened with the Iran war. You saw the effect of drones like negating our interceptor missiles. They even kind of negated aircraft carriers to a certain point. So the technology is going to go both ways, unfortunately, but that's going to happen. I'm not telling people to do it. I'm just telling you it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's my predictive programming, I guess. But indirect suggestions are very powerful. It's very pervasive. Think of it like contextual. Think of the direct suggestion more as the content, but the indirect suggestion is the context.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about the use of the Hegelian dialectic and false choices. This, I think, is a critical component of establishing these political cults and cult leaders and turning off the minds of a majority of the American people. And it is a classic trauma and fear technique. So, I've observed over the past 30 years in observing politics. Before I became an independent, Dr. Joe, I would be highly traumatized when Democrat presidents were in office and feel very safe when Republican presidents were in office, right? There was this intense emotional component to how I perceived politics and government. And I have to imagine that I'm not isolated. I'm not a stupid person. I am a somewhat intelligent woman. I have 3 children. I've survived this long. But the first 35, 36 years of my life, I was firmly entrenched, I believe, in the political cult of the Republican Party. And I have come to understand that those two conflicting ideologies or those two conflicting groups are necessary in keeping people traumatized and then hopeful, traumatized and then hopeful. But ultimately, the most important thing is divided, right? Because we so fear the other side, we allow our side to abuse us and get away with things that we would never let them do. And that is something that I've seen most intensely within the context of the Trump cult and this second round of the Trump presidency. Your thoughts on that concept of the Hegelian dialectic?
I think you're nailing it because it becomes a lesser of the two evils. Now, what people have to realize, though, is half of the Republicans vote for a Republican because they think they suck less than the other side. It's not because they like the Republicans. It's literally because of what you're talking about. They're just the other side's going to make things a lot worse. And in some instances, that may be true. I know people that haven't voted for president in the last 30 years, but they'll vote the lower stuff on the ballot just because they're not going to participate in that.
Right. But that's part of the call. That's part, like Republicans who are not super sticky to Trump, right? They're still pulling the lever for Republicans because they're afraid of Democrats and vice versa. Democrats are still going to vote for Democrats because they're afraid of the Republicans.
It's a tactic, though, to maneuver the population further to the left. So the left keeps going crazier left, because Marxism is a cult.
Right.
That literally falls within the definition of a cult. So the left keeps going further to the left. So the Republicans are going further. I mean, the Republicans today are what moderate Democrats were in the 90s.
Oh, I don't think so. I think the Republicans are fascists and the Democrats are communists. Yeah.
Fascism is a left-wing ideology.
Well, but I think that even a left-right paradigm is not the right paradigm. I think left-right puts you into that Hegelian dialectic of false choices.
This is what I'm saying. So they give a phony like dual axis here, like fascism is a right. It's not. On your far right, you got Ron Paul, you keep going, then you got total anarchy, right? No government, just total freedom, right? As we go along, we move along, we have limited government. Then you go further to the left, you have fascism, where you're mixing capitalism with corporatism. And so that is not free enterprise. You're already to the left there. It's authoritarian. Yep. You go further to the left, you get socialism, you keep going, you communism, Marxism. Okay, I kind of, in my book, I talk about psychopathic authoritarianism because I'm applying it to all sides. So I go beyond that. I do go beyond the right-left thing in that sense. But I mean, and so the challenge is right now, maybe if we had Biden or Kamala Harris, we might have greater authoritarianism right now, but you would have the right wing resisting it very strong, right? For lack of a better word, the political right, Republicans and those in line. But right now, they're all kind of like placated by Trump. Now, I will say this, though. The Trump cult that you're talking about is increasingly shrinking.
Yes.
They are hardcore people. I think they're left with right now the low information supporters of Trump. And by the way, I've been America First since the 90s. I have a letter of endorsement from Pat Buchanan, who's the father of the America First movement. So I don't want to hear any of this nonsense. So I'm not even close to left.
Now, listen, Tom Massey is not joining America First. See, I think America First is them trying to corral us into a new movement.
Oh, they co-opted it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at someone like Nick Fuentes, who is the poster boy for America First, he's vile, horrifying, disgusting. Right. So we have to be careful with those labels. And I thought it was interesting. Tom Massey in Kentucky during his primary, I paid attention to this. When asked if he was America First, he's like, I'm Americans first. He didn't buy into the labeling of that, which I thought was very astute. And quite.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that label, though, because in fact, I never bought into the MAGA thing. It just seems so commercial. But all you're saying is you believe your government's supposed to represent you, not foreign entities or globalist corporations, or whatever. It just means we support self-government like a republic should be.
Sure.
Some people think that means you have to hate people from other countries. No, it just means we don't want to bomb the crap out of them. We want to trade with them.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, the isolationists are the people who don't want to attack everybody. It's like the guy walking down the street punching everybody he sees. But so they're not using coercion. They're propagandizing everybody. Trump definitely has a lot of these features of the cult leader. The way he's being deified, and this is common. We saw this with Obama too. Oprah Winfrey was calling him the one, and this is the irony, because a lot of Republicans were very critical of that personality cult that was around Obama, but then this personality cult emerged around Trump, and you see this kind of ignore. Here's how you know when it's getting cult-like, is when people just start ignoring stuff that contradicts the narrative. And that's where that whole cognitive dissonance thing plays in there.
Well, let's define these terms. Let's slow down. I want to slow down and define these terms. And I want to talk about the dark triad of characteristics that I think, Donald, let's talk about the characteristics of a narcissistic, psychopathic leader that runs
the dark tetrad, actually. So in my book, I talk about sadism. In fact, the first 4 chapters of my book: sadism, narcissism, Machiavellism, and then psychopathy. And so, and we saw this during COVID, especially with the sadism. Like,
talk about the sadism. Give me some examples of sadism in Donald Trump.
So when you're watching them drop the smart bombs and you're kind of cheering, that's a little sadistic. Sadism in everyday life is like my sarcastic humor. That's sadistic. People possess it to varying degrees. Gets a little darker when you get into the area of gossip, where it's like, oh, you know what, she deserves what she got, that kind of thing. Then you get a little darker when you're the serial killer, of course, is like getting a thrill out of like killing their victims. You know, watching the Three Stooges or slapstick comedy, your friend slips and falls on the snow, you see they're okay, you start laughing. That's a little bit of a sadistic humor.
When Donald Trump said I could shoot someone in the face on Fifth Avenue and my followers, my voters would still vote for me. Is that sadistic?
That is more, it could
It
be,
seems
but
like
it might be more
he's joyful.
Machiavellian.
It seems like he loves it. He
Yeah,
loves the idea that he could murder
lacks the
someone.
emotion. The psychopathy lacks the emotion.
Yeah.
So let me just go in order. So the sadism is where you're getting pleasure from creating the pain in others, and so but they take advantage of your everyday. This is more about psychopathic authoritarianism than necessarily cults, but the sadism, it's like they take advantage of your everyday sadism because you see the state not you, but you see the state as an extension of your ego. So when the state is exerting power, all of a sudden I feel all powerful. Oh, did you see that smart Trump bopping others people in the Middle East there or wherever it is? And so that's a way for powerless people to feel powerful because they're imagining the state as an extension of themselves. When in reality, the bigger the state gets, the smaller you get. But or the everyday sadism would be like the gatekeeper. Whenever you put someone at motor vehicles or something, like, soon they're in that gatekeeper mold. It's like their sadism comes out. We saw this like with say a young couple walking in the park, and all of a sudden the soccer moms are chasing them for not wearing a mask. You know, something crazy like that. That's a sadistic pleasure they were getting out of that. They might not have been conscious of it, but that was there.
Right. So sadism, narcissism. Let's go into that a bit.
So the narcissism, you've got your grandiose narcissist and your malignant narcissist. A lot of people accuse Trump of being both of those. The malignant narcissist is a little more sadistic, likes to humiliate people, kind of embarrass them. Trump definitely did that with his opponents. The difference now is he's doing it with his supporters.
Yes.
Which that statement you just stated about the Fifth Avenue would kind of qualify a little bit there. So the grandiose and the malignant narcissists kind of take advantage of the communal narcissist, the collective narcissist, and the covert narcissist. The communal narcissists, they're the ones who do the virtue signaling. They're the ones who are posting videos or images of themselves with their masks on social media, or getting shots. And so they're easy to manipulate because they want that reward and attention. The collective narcissists, you manipulate them because they get into the us versus them thing.
Right.
They demonized you for not getting a shot or something, or not wearing a mask or so on. We see this with the political sides as well. You demonize someone because they're a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
Meanwhile, there are people on each side that actually think critically. Not everybody's in a cult. Then you got your the Machiavellianism is like this, and this is really pushed a lot in the business world or in different areas. But that's like, you know, going back to like Sun Tzu and like Machiavelli, obviously the prince, and that's just
deception.
Yeah, Bill Clinton was like, and Nixon were two that really stood out as being Machiavellian. They're kind of amoral and just would, you know, you're out there saying one thing when really you're doing it totally opposite.
Well, what I learned about Machiavellianism, and the Prince, that was his book on, and it was essentially, if you just distilled it down to the core premise, it is a very calculated ends justifies the means, where there isn't any emotion. There is no virtue. There isn't any right or wrong. The only principle that matters is power, or the only element that matters is power. And you obtain and consolidate power in any way possible. It does not matter how many people you kill, deceive, manipulate. Doesn't matter if you violate the Bill of Rights, human rights, natural rights, the Constitution. It is all about establishing that power, and that is the virtue. The virtue is power, and any pursuit of that power is virtuous. And we see this, I think, with Trump. I agree with you on Bill Clinton and Nixon, but with Trump, the kidnapping of the Venezuelan president, and the, you know,
bombing the speedboats.
Right. So and Sun Tzu, same thing. Like, you can lie, you can cheat, you can steal, you can do whatever you want. That's all very principled and virtuous if it is in the pursuit of power.
Now, keep in mind, these are constructs. Now, some people would argue that Machiavellianism is just like a lesser version of psychopathy. The biggest difference is the psychopathy is like there's just no empathy. It's just a void. Like, it's just it's just and so the challenge is that and like, you know, Bush, you know, Obama, Biden, Trump, they would all, their actions as presidents would all kind of fit into psychopathy. I mean, Obama had his drone campaign and so on, and obviously threatening to destroy a civilization as Trump has done. These are things that would fit within like the psychopathy, for sure. And where they get the average person is when you're watching the smart bombs drop and cheering, and you're not realizing you're blowing up human beings. Like, okay, even if you have to kill someone for your survival, you really shouldn't be enjoying it.
No,
that's the challenge here. And I talk about this in my book. You remember the movie Lawrence of Arabia, and classic movie. If nobody ever saw it, it's really good. And so there's a scene in the movie where he had to execute one of the Arabs because otherwise the two tribes would start fighting. So he's like, okay, I'll do it. So he executes the guy, and it's the first time he killed somebody. And the other guy, who's a friend of one of the Arabs, comes up to him and is like, asking how he's doing. Is he okay? This is your first time? He's like, no, you don't understand. I enjoyed it. And he was totally terrified. And see, that's the thing. It becomes, I'm sure most of these presidents, when they tell them, whoever their boss is tells them that they got to go drop a bomb on someone or do something like that, I'm sure they got a queasy feeling at first. But then I'm telling you, they get off on it. It's or they thrive on it. And see, that's the thing, that all these negative states, they're kind of like a lustful addiction to it. And that's, I kind of liken it to addiction. But within the context of the cults themselves, it's a lot of propagandizing. It's a lot of, I always say, don't believe your own spin about your side and about the other side.
Yeah, right.
It's real easy for me to demonize everybody that has a different viewpoint as me, and whereas my side's right, and you can really delude yourself there. Now, the other issue you started talking was the cognitive dissonance. So that
let's slow down again though, because I want to stay on a narrow. I want to go on a path here with you.
You got
So we've just identified the characteristics of the malignant, psychopathic, authoritarian leader.
It's the dark tetrad and how I apply it to psychopathic authoritarian.
The dark tetrad. And Dr. Joe Sansone, in the analysis, and one of the reasons I appreciate your analysis is that you equally apply these distinctions to both the left and the right. And so his premise is that we've seen these types of characteristics from our leaders, understanding that our leaders are likely selected, not elected, right, for these characteristics. They have some elements of control, but not all control. But I think that they do have these characteristics. And so the second part here, and you mentioned cognitive dissonance, is that, well, so why do Americans worship and vote for malignant, narcissistic psychopaths who get off on killing them, who have God complexes? Like, why do we allow them to get away with that? Why can't we see outside of the political cults and begin to activate in a way that reduces the amount of power they have, or that holds them accountable for broken promises or for expansions of authoritarianism, whether it's D or R? Like, what is it that is missing in our culture and our society within the American people that keeps us from revolting against this and calling it out?
Well, because we're stupid. But besides that, all right. So basically what you're asking.
I don't think so. I mean, I think there are a lot of intelligent people out there.
The elections. What you're asking there basically is that why don't we get off the train once we recognize there's something wrong with it? It's going in the wrong place. That's a good metaphor, I think. And so what happens is Leon Festinger, and I got his book right here, I think you can see it, When Prophecy Fails. I mean, this originally came out in 1956. And what he did is he had his researchers infiltrate a UFO cult.
Okay.
And what they did is they had it was like an end times cult, and they had a prediction of when the UFO was going to come. They were all going to fly away, that kind of thing. I mean, at least it wasn't like the Hale Bob thing where they all died,
Right.
In 1997, people remember that. There was with the Hale Bob comment, and it was the Heaven's Gate cult, if I remember.
The Heaven's Gate cult. Yep.
That was a big thing at the time. And so, but what they infiltrated the cult, and they don't tell you the name of the cult, but they infiltrated the cult, and after the leaders predicted the end time and it passed, and they came up with another story and then predicted another end time and it passed, and so on. And what they realized is a certain amount of people within the cult clung to the beliefs and rejected the evidence to the contrary. Now, this has happened in the past. Festinger, he talks about the Millerites in the 1800s, where they were a Christian group, and they literally, like their leaders, predicted the date when Jesus was going to return. They did this for like 3 years. They kept changing the date. Finally, it just disintegrated. People caught on.
Right.
Or he talks about Sabbatai Zebi, I think his name was, in the 1600s. Big movement among Jews where they were, it was a cult, like they believed it was their Messiah. And they went off to the Middle East. There were certain things he was supposed to do, and he got arrested by the Turkish authorities. They were still clinging to it. It wasn't until the guy actually converted to Islam that they finally all quit. Like, okay, this isn't our Messiah. So
you're saying we have a chance here. What you're saying is we have a chance to exit the cults.
Yeah, no, we do. We just have to recognize what the cognitive dissonance is. So what it is, it's like, okay, I've got these strong beliefs. I'm getting evidence to the contrary. It's creating this dissonance, this discomfort. So then we look for different ways to alleviate it. If you're a functional person, you'll start investigating like some of the things. You'll start looking up things and seeing if this is true, if that's true. And that's how you alleviate. You'll try to get to the truth. But what happens with a lot of people is they just cling to their existing beliefs and they go into denial. Now, in my book, I talk a little bit about this, and I kind of say this could be an anticipatory phase of grief and loss, because what it is you identify with the beliefs. Because I think it goes beyond just the dissonance. Because if you notice, that's why the identity politics is real important. Once I identify with the belief, and then it's like part of my identity. This is why people get mad when they disagree with them. So because all right, instead of recognizing I'm an infinite being, I'm limiting myself to my emotionalized belief system. So when Shannon disagrees with my belief, I take it as an attack on me. So I get real defensive. It's a misidentification of what I am. I'm not my beliefs. Don't get me wrong. It's good to have good convictions and everything, but it's just an extreme case of that. So that's what cognitive dissonance is. It's basically a way to come about I'll give you an example. You were mentioning the election thing. I have a friend of mine, good guy. He's a mainstream Republican. Gets uncomfortable whenever I talk about real issues with him, though.
Right.
And so we were talking about the elections and the Massey thing, and I'm like, okay, there were a lot. Like the next day, like Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams went through like a bunch of the inconsistencies in that election. I'm like, okay, so I go to him. I'm like, look, I don't. This is to my friend. I'm like, look, I can't sit here and tell you our elections are fake, but what I can tell you is it's illogical and unreasonable for me to assume they're not cheating if I can't verify the source code on the computer voting or the computers that tabulate the paper ballots.
Absolutely.
It would be stupid. That would be like me letting Shannon count the votes in the back room and nobody can watch.
Yeah.
She happens to be running for office. And so why would we logically believe that they're not cheating if it's not transparent? It'd be like your bank. Like you put your money in a bank, but they don't give you an account number or a statement. But trust us, the money's there.
Right.
So I'm not saying all elections are fake, but I'm not discounting, like you just mentioned, Lindsey Graham. I don't think that, like reasonably, I don't think there's any reasonable reason somebody would elect that loser again. Like was it real? I don't know. But you know how I'd know? If we saw the source code, or actually if we had paper ballot elections and in every precinct they just live stream it, so it's recorded forever and anybody can watch them count the vote. Then there'd be no questions about it.
Right. We should go back to paper balloting.
Yeah, exactly. And then we wouldn't have to have cognitive dissonance. We could all see it,
Right.
But, so the cognitive dissonance is real. It happens with a lot of people. Listen, Democrats are in cults too. Obviously the climate change end time cult is actually a really good example of this.
Climate change end time cult. Yes, you're right. Yeah, each cult has its own apocalypse.
Yeah.
Every cult has its own apocalypse, the end of the world, and I think that triggers emotion and fear and anxiety, and so they have to turn on those switches. They have to pressure buttons in those ways, because that starts the fear and anxiety, and then that puts you in a vulnerable position to accept a hero or someone to come in and save you. Then you need the savior, right? Because that's going to save you from whether it's the global warming apocalypse or whatever the right-wing version of the apocalypse is, right?
Yeah. So, and one thing, and we'll get into the fear dynamics. One thing though, on the secular end times cult, or the climate change cult, because it's the same pattern, it's just secular. And there's when you're dealing with end time cults, it's always dealing with a deep rooted hatred of self
Mm-hmm.
and indirectly God. Because how do you know that? It's all about the judgment.
Mm.
Think of
Right.
even though there's no God involved here with the secular end times cult, with the climate change people, they're buying into irrational beliefs like, okay, climate change is normal. It's been, I mean, come on.
Mhm.
But they started off with global warming, but in order to alleviate the cognitive dissonance, they shifted it to climate change, which is kind of impossible to argue against because the climate's always changing.
Right.
And they're Al Gore's like end time, and other people, like they said everything was getting flooded out, like those dates all passed, so they just shifted what then to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same pattern. It may not be religious, but it is the same exact pattern that we're going to get judged. The end is here, and because humans are bad, we're destroying the world. That's the innate message. I think people are
Right.
good. I think
Isn't it an element of pride? Like it is justifying everything that they've put together in terms of their belief system. And so there is this weird sadistic, to use another one of your words, pleasure in the chickens coming home to roost. Right? Like
yeah,
you can spot it, whether it is a very religious person who is obsessed with the apocalypse and
yep,
obsessed with the rapture and the end times, or a global warming cultist that is obsessed with their own version of end times. There is a weird pleasure that I've noticed in those types of people, where they almost want the disaster to come because it's going to justify and prove them right in a sense, and somehow feed their pride.
So evil's addictive.
Yeah.
The negative emotional states are addictive. You ever really angry and someone offers you a solution? You're like, shut up, leave me alone. I'm intoxicated on the anger in that moment. And so when you get to a lot, there's like a drama, a significance that comes to it. And let's face it, you touched on it already with the fear. Once you introduce fear, like people's thought patterns become more rigid. They're
Mm-hmm.
not as fluid and flexible. They don't have that cognitive flexibility, and they're easier to manipulate as a result. And so the
Let's
fear,
home in there. I want to dial in there on fear and trauma,
I'm
because
afraid, but okay.
I think that trauma based mind control is some of the most powerful mind control that I have witnessed. And when they do it in a mass media formulation, when they do it, to a large group of people
Mhm.
via mass media, I think that we literally could be looking at types of mass hypnosis. And there have been very traumatizing events throughout U.S. history, particularly since 1963, starting with the very public assassination of John F. Kennedy in front of the American people. That was a trauma event for the American people. Fast forward to Pearl Harbor. Fast forward to, there are other instances, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. Then you have 9/11. Then you have COVID, lockdowns. It seems as at every moment when they inflict that trauma, it makes people incredibly vulnerable then to accepting authoritarianism and totalitarianism, but also it makes them susceptible to cult leaders and cult. And that's what I saw with Donald Trump. People get so traumatized by what they perceive the left is doing, and that is deployed through mass media, that they cling to Donald Trump. They literally imprint on him. He becomes the savior. And that cognitive dissonance just ramps up because it's basically their only survival mechanism, is the way that I see it. So I want to hold your thought because I want to go right there when we come back. I'm going to take a quick commercial break because we do have to pay the bills here on the Shannon Joy Show. We're joined by the way, though, see, I don't do subliminal messaging here on my show, Joe.
Okay. I'm not going to mention the pile of shift gold I got over here, but okay.
Yeah, well, no, you know what though? Honestly, because I never want to be manipulative and I always want to be upfront. Like my policy on the Shannon Joy Show is to always identify my advertisers. So people know that Schiff Gold is an advertiser on the Shannon Joy Show and he pays for his advertising. And so I can still talk about him and message him, but my audience is armed with the truth and all the information, and they can they can understand that there's a transactional relationship there. If they want to use Schiff Gold, they can. If they don't have to. But Many of my colleagues in this industry do not do that. They don't, and it's part of that subliminal, as you mentioned, that messaging. It just makes the listener or the viewer more vulnerable. And I don't ever want to do that. So with that being said, though, we are going to a commercial break. And if you are in the market for any of the goods and services that are featured in the Shannon Joy Show, please go ahead and patronize my sponsors. Again, that's how we keep the lights on here on the Shannon Joy Show. So we'll be back in a moment with Dr. Joe Sansone. Make sure that you follow him right now on his Substack. It is Mind Matters and Everything Else with Dr. Joe Sansone. We'll be back in a moment right here on the Shannon Joy Show. All right, make sure that every time you shop at the satellite phone store, sat123.com/joy, joy, that is sat123.com/joy, you are using the JOY promo code. That is going to get you at least 10% off your entire order. And if you're looking at products like generators or solar panels, if you're looking at a satellite phone and you're going to get a satellite phone subscription, those could be upwards over thousands of dollars. So that 10% discount is going to be huge. But they do have the entire line of Faraday products, the dark bags. So these are amazing. The Faraday technology not only protects you from harmful EMF radiation, but it also protects your phone from an EMP attack or any type of breakdown. So great products. The Faraday collection also shields you, protects you from the prying eyes of the federal government or the big tech bros. That's right. When you drop your phone or your device into a satellite phone store Faraday bag or backpack, you're off the grid. You are untraceable. They can't find you. And it gives you that added element of privacy while also protecting you from those harmful EMF radiation rays. So just really great technology, the best out there, and at the best prices when you use that JOY promo code. So sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. He also said this: it looks like the correction in the tech stocks, so not just Bitcoin, but that bubble that we are talking about, has finally begun. That's bad news for Bitcoin and the tech stocks, as the tech rally was its main support. As we see the tech stocks begin to sell off, Bitcoin should crash. Gold will likely head in the opposite direction as investors now finally begin to buy a true safe haven asset. We haven't seen huge gains in gold and silver because the dominance of the PSYOP, the marketing campaign, the propaganda campaign that has been waged against the American people and against the markets over the past 3 years, hyping up the AI bubble relentlessly. I've never seen anything like it. At some point, people are going to realize, and investors are going to realize, retail investors and institutional investors are going to realize that there's no there there. And everybody is realizing it now. I'm seeing it all over my social media. Everything that we told you here on the Shannon Joy Show is coming true. And this is when people move into safe haven assets. Safe haven assets for, the entirety of human history have been gold and silver, predominantly gold. If you do not have a gold strategy, I want to highly encourage you to go to shiftgold.com/joy. That is shiftgold.com/joy ASAP, like today, to get your metal strategy in place. At Shift Gold, you can buy and sell physical gold and silver. You can explore hedging against the chaos with a gold or silver-backed IRA. And he even has an option for tokenized gold, which gives you the ability to buy physical gold and silver. You don't take custody of it, but you can buy it in smaller chunks. So you can allocate $50, $100, $200 a month to that tokenized gold. And as soon as you hit a certain threshold, you can trade it in and you can actually take custody of your physical gold and silver. It's a great option for people who don't have enough money to meet those reserves if you're buying physical gold and silver, and for younger investors, people who want to begin to hedge. So that's shiftgold.com/joy, shiftgold.com/. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you to our friends over at Shift Joy. By the way, make sure you tune in tomorrow On the Shannon Joy Show, Ainsley Brown is with us. She is battling the data centers from the bottom up, and she is waging an epic battle against an attempt to use eminent domain to seize 300 plus houses in the state of Georgia. She's fighting to save her mom's house. She's an amazing warrior, and she's going to talk to us about how they do this, how they embed themselves in communities and over a long period of time plan and plot to steal people's homes for these data centers. It's insane. We're going to talk to Ainsley Brown tomorrow on the Shannon Joy Show. On Friday, we have Ed Dowd joining us live in the Shannon Joy Show to talk about the incoming financial crisis. You saw the headlines today. CPI inflation rose 4.2%. The report just came out today. This is double what was predicted by the Fed, and it is the highest since 2023. So the Biden inflation that all the Republicans were screaming about during his administration is now back in full swing, and even worse under Trump for a variety of reasons. Most of those increases came in the form of higher energy costs for every American. That has to do with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the war in Iran and the calculated and premeditated energy crisis that I believe they're deploying here in the US. It was also food and shelter, housing. Skyrocketing housing prices is making rent go up for everyone. Of course, we all know what's going on at the grocery store. So all of this is beginning to tighten in around average Americans. And we also have the insane insider trading, the pump and jumps, the market manipulations, and the insane valuations of these big tech AI companies as they barrel towards IPOs and going public so they can dump their crappy companies on the backs of American retirees through their pensions and 401ks. All of that we're going to go through with Ed Dowd, former BlackRock investor. He's absolutely brilliant, and we're going to learn more about that on Friday. So make sure that you are keeping it tuned right here on the Shannon Joy Show for the next 2 days. We have a big lineup of great guests for next week as well. So thank you to Joe Sansone, who is joining me today in the Joy Virtual Studio in the final segment of the Shannon Joy Show, talking about the United States of political cults and the insane, narcissistic, psychopathic cult leaders that occupy the presidencies of the United States of America, both Democrat and Republican. What is a cult? How do they grow? How do these leaders manipulate? How do they use mass media to conduct the equivalent of mass trauma and mass hypnosis on the American people? In fact, Dr. Joe, this is one of the comments from the live chat here. Where is this? This is a mass MK Ultra from Proctor Surf. We're experiencing mass MK Ultra. MK Ultra is that fear-based trauma and mind control. I'd love to go there. Go ahead.
So to real toxic relationships, you have the trauma binding. It's like the only way to get intimacy. You have the trauma, then you make up, and so on. Even so programmed through media. Even go back to like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, the trauma binding with the Rudolph and Irby, the dentist. They each share their stories, and so most movies, if you think about it, they have a little trauma bonding that goes on among the characters. They share something that's intense, and then they get closer, and so you're kind of conditioned for it. So the way it happens now in Trump's case, the way they really reinforced the trauma binding with people was you had all these Democrats like trying to indict him, and some of the things were kind of frivolous too, trying to indict him and put him in jail. So that trauma bonding thing with a lot of his core supporters,
right.
And because by the way, we really have to get careful about this idea of putting people in jail. The reason Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon was because they were going to prosecute him and either arrest him or exile him for what? For conquering Gaul. So modern day France. So your republic is going to end if you keep going down that route. But so that's how they did the trauma bonding with Trump. So I want you to think of this.
Let's expand that. I mean, there is a lot of speculation about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, just a few months before the election. Many people believe that was WWF wrestling, that it was not real, that it was a psychological operation that was designed. I mean, that was the epitome of the trauma bonding. I mean, he was perp walked and threatened with arrest how many times? 4, 5, 6 times. He made about, a quarter of a million in donations every time that happened. That's how I picked up on him. I'm like, this is like a shtick. But, that trauma of witnessing what many thought was a attempted assassination really propelled him into, and it motivated and energized his base in a very, kind of nasty way. And I'm not saying it was or it wasn't. I'm just saying that there's speculation.
It's a good point though, Shannon, because you don't have to look. I don't have to, I remember when that first happened, I said, all right, 70% chance it was real. I had a 30% chance it was fake. Seriously. And I was being attacked by people for not saying it was fake. Now I'm probably the other way. I'm probably like 60, 70% chance it was fake. I don't know. But I mean, I'm not 100% either way because I don't know. But that definitely reinforced the trauma bonding for sure. So Cartman's drama triangle, really, you got your victim, your persecutor, your rescuer. Your classic fairy tale. Cinderella's the victim. Sorry, it's an Italian fairy tale. Cinderella's the victim. The stepmother's the persecutor, and Prince Charming doesn't even look like me, but Prince Charming is the rescuer. Right. And so this is in all literature. It's in politics too. So no matter who it is, they create the problem. You're the victim. Okay. That person over there, whoever it is the perpetrator or persecutor, and they're the rescuer, and they come in to rescue you. And that's a similar pattern that they all do. They're all coming in to rescue for a problem that they likely created. They meaning the government. And most of our problems are caused by government.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. Even our lack of border security is the government not doing its one job.
Right.
It's like,
and so that Cinderella story is told to both the left and the right in isolation, because the left is plugged into their algorithms and the left-wing news media, MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times. And so they're getting that loop constantly that they're the victims, Trump and the Republicans are the villains, and whoever the next Democrat, Biden or Kamala, whoever they hold up, that's going to be the new savior for them. And in the Republican aspect of this, Republicans are locked in isolation to Fox News and AM talk radio. And so they're only getting one narrative, but they're both sides are being fed that same type of trauma loop. And this is why we are getting further and further apart. It's why people can't have dinner together or have Thanksgiving, right? Because I'm telling you, Joe, I talk to some of my friends who are MAGA cult worshipers, and they are in a different reality. They literally read different news, see different headlines. It is an alternate reality. I think that mass media, especially on the internet, has created. It's made it easier to isolate these people into their ideological or partisan belief systems.
I think that is a smaller, again, and increasingly, most people I know that voted for Trump are not happy with him.
But they still vote for him.
Well, I mean, that's
crazy.
What's the alternative? That's how they
but that's what's so crazy.
No, it's the dichotomy that they create.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to say is, if you're having an immediate emotional response to any type of political issue, chances are you've been manipulated by mass media and you need to step back.
Wow. Right.
I get that immediate emotional response. I've been programmed for that. And remember, people 100, 200 years ago read. They might have read sensational newspapers, but they read. We're getting radio and TV and internet, which are very hypnotic mediums. And so step back from those emotions and just think more critically. You might still come to the same conclusion, but at least you're doing it with critical thinking.
Right.
Just emotionally reacting. Does that make sense?
Right. It makes so much sense. I have this poster of Ted Cruz. I don't know if you see behind me. Sabo is a street artist out of LA. And back when Ted Cruz was actually a conservative constitutionalist, and he was up against Trump in the primary
I knew
2015.
He was about Cruz,
I fell for it. Yeah. I fell for it. That was the last, and this is so interesting that you mentioned that, because I was super invested. It was year 1 or 2 of my radio show. So I was reporting on this. I was super invested in that primary. I never supported Trump. I thought he was horrifying from day one. a Trojan horse, liberal Democrat, never fell for it. But I thought Ted Cruz was the guy. He was my savior in that political moment. And so I was just consumed. Every poll, every news story, whether it was good or bad, I was constantly on Twitter scrolling, and I would get this hit of dopamine every time I saw a good poll number regarding the primary. And I remember I was sitting, my daughter was at an ice skating lesson, and I'm sitting in the arena and I'm on my phone and I'm scrolling, and it was just this, I had this epiphany. This epiphany. I'm like, why am I so emotional about? Why is this making me feel a certain way? I'm like, this shouldn't make me feel any kind of way, like whether Cruz wins or loses, or this poll is good for him or bad for him. Like, this is unhealthy. That's what I thought in my mind. And at that moment, that was probably the first time that I began to emancipate from, the party cult, the conservative cult, all that kind of stuff. So I keep that, I got this poster because I thought he was like such a badass. So I keep the poster up to remind me of the last time that I engaged in political worship or hero, worship of a political candidate. And I think that you're spot on. Like, the moment, if you guys are watching right now, the moment you feel something about politics, that's where you have to just put your hackles up and say, as you said, take a step back. So interesting.
Totally. You can use it as a dartboard. It'll suffice.
Yeah, people think it's because I like them. It's not because I like them. It's because I need to remember. I need to remind myself not to fall into these political cults and to keep my head on straight, right? And to call these guys out in a consistent way. What about the trauma bonding? What about this? Okay. So we identified kind of the party aspect of this, but what do you make of these mass trauma events? 9/11, COVID-19, Pearl Harbor, assassinations.
It's a similar thing. Let's go to 9/11. That was clearly a false flag. Personally, I think the Mossad and the CIA were involved with it. I thought it wouldn't happen because I remember everything that happened, and they pretended it all didn't happen as time went on. But I remember when they were deporting people and everything. I think it was a false flag. But there was an immediate trauma reaction to that, where they were able to decouple cognitive thinking, critical thinking from most people, because they had you emotionally go in the back of your brain with the amygdala just totally fired up because you needed revenge. You needed, because we had this idea that we were invincible, and all of a sudden you just blew something up. Right. And of course, the Iran war got rid of that idea. But so they got people to literally support. Now, they did a year of propaganda to get people to go along with it, but they got people to support a war against Iraq, which even in their fake cover story had nothing to do with it. Like, come on, they're going to find the passports of all these people in the plane. Like, that was all lies. But I mean, so we attacked Iraq, which had nothing to do with it at all. Zero, as a result of this war. So the trauma was real important there because it was personal for a lot of people, people that died there and so on. And if you watched it when it happened and people were jumping out of the buildings, that was real traumatic for me.
I will never forget this. This was seared into my brain. Yeah. I was in my early 20s, my very first job. I saw the second plane hit the building. I will never forget it. I'll never forget COVID. COVID was a horrifying trauma. For a lot of people, because they were afraid of the pandemic, but for me, it was the lockdowns. I knew that it was totalitarianism.
It was watching people that you thought were normal turn into minions,
zombies.
That was traumatizing. So I mean, these political cults exist. The trick is to not. It's okay to be passionate. Just don't be so passionate about being right.
Right. You got to be okay with saying, I'm totally wrong about this. I got this wrong. Like, you can't be afraid of that. No. Because everyone's going to get things wrong.
I even heard that Ron Paul was wrong once, like in 1972.
One time. You know what I said to my one of my friends who is super Trumpy, is that, like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, if you believed Trump, there's nothing for you to be ashamed of. You shouldn't have to carry the baggage. I think when people vote for someone or get behind a candidate, they take on that baggage of whether the candidate did a good job or a bad job. They feel as if they're responsible
60
for,
seconds, because I know you got to wrap up. Let me address this and
yeah,
kind of talk about this. So
yeah,
this is a good point actually to end with. So how do you help somebody? So you got to tell them the truth. All right. Now, a
yeah,
lot of times I hit them over the head with the truth. They'll get mad at me. I don't care if they don't talk to me for a year. They'll get over it. But
yeah, yeah,
that kernel of truth is there, and it grows and grows. The other way is the softer approach, where you just kind of start, because if you confront them, you're gonna be arguing with them. That kind
right,
of thing. I just hit them over the head and let them deal with it. But I
yeah,
mean, you kind of slowly want to open the door with some questions, get them to start questioning things, and give them an out. For instance, the lady, whoever you're talking about, guy or girl, I mean, you can point out that, look, the ideas that he pushed, his rhetoric, wasn't the problem. The problem is he's not doing. So it's like you can kind of start separating the ideas from what he's actually doing,
right,
and start getting them to question that a little bit. Because if it's about me having to give up all these worldviews that I have, then all of a sudden that's even harder, because I'm really wrapped up in my identity. So that
right,
way, one way to start kind of inching people away is to separate his rhetoric from what he's doing, because
right.
you're identifying with the rhetoric,
Yeah. Well, and I also think allowing them, giving them those personal stories. Like I too believed in the Republican Party for a
Right.
very long time. I too believed in a Republican candidate in Ted Cruz. I thought he was going to be the savior. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with believing people when they tell you they're going to do things. Like that's a very natural human thing. It's their fault for lying to you.
Yeah,
It's
right.
their fault for being a con artist. It's their fault for being corrupted, not your fault, right? For voting for
Just
them.
remember, don't
Yeah.
be a psychopathic authoritarianism. It's okay if people have different views than you.
Yes, exactly.
It's okay.
Exactly. So give us, yeah, let's keep going on. Here's one other thing I want to end on that I think is really important. Everyone believes that they could never be susceptible to a cult, right? I would posit the idea that everyone is susceptible to falling into a cult. Anyone, even someone as well versed as you are, Joe Sansone. I think even people who understand cults, they understand the characteristics of a cult leader or a psychopath. But when you're traumatized, like I haven't been traumatized in a while, but if I were to be traumatized tomorrow and I was in a very vulnerable situation, regardless of my entire history, my 50-year history, I could be in a position to be manipulated or drawn into a cult. So I think that and I'd like you to kind of speak on that to close us out. Like, how do we continue as individuals to resist this type of thinking? And I would say, I think it starts though with understanding that it doesn't matter how smart you are, how intelligent you are, how much money is in the bank, how long you've lived on this earth without being in a cult. There, I think, is always potential for anyone to fall into that cult. So I'd like you to end on that and get your thoughts there.
Well, it's okay if you're in the Shannon Joy radio show cult. That's okay. Come
on in.
Yeah. So anybody, yeah, okay. Some of us are more individualistic, so we're probably less likely to succumb, because you start getting into group things. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm getting it's like I'm shopping. The walls are not me.
Right. There's personality stuff there.
Yeah, some of us are just like that. But you're right. Very smart people can get bought up by it. Look, just like in COVID, you saw it. Because I got to tell you right now, the smarter somebody is, the better a hypnotic subject they are. It's the opposite.
Really?
Of what I get someone with 160 IQ, they drop like a fly. It's hysterical. So,
really?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have to go with it. It's a collaborative process, but so that's why we saw some really smart people getting brainwashed during COVID.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with your prior conditioning. Somewhere along the line, like each of us at different points woke up and started questioning narratives and authority. Me, it was at a very young age because I was a juvenile delinquent. But I mean, other people, it was in their 20s or 30s. If something happened, a lot of people, it was 9/11. So a lot of people, because of 9/11, were prepped to realize COVID was another con.
Right.
And so a lot of it's just prior personal experience. So again, I'm going to say the best way to not fall into a cult is to, one, look at all viewpoints, look at different viewpoints. Don't be guided by emotion so much. It's okay to be enthusiastic and passionate. So don't get me wrong, but you need to step back sometimes from the emotions and just start remember, like your ideology is a lot like a computer algorithm. It's kind of like on autopilot, but you have to disengage your ideology once in a while and just look at things and use your discernment in the moment. Because ideology is just a template. Even
Right.
if it's a good ideology, it's still a template. There's still that situational awareness and context that you need to use.
Right.
And so be more independent minded like that. And it's okay to be wrong, because here's the problem. People realize they're wrong and they don't want to look at the evidence, and they dig deeper into their cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
That's the,
Yeah.
so you remember, you can't learn and be right.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you like to learn, you got to accept you're going to be wrong.
Right. 100%.
No, wrong. I said, damn it. But yeah. So yeah, it's just, be a little more open. They want you to question everything, like so that if they get you to question everything, you don't even have like any basis points of reality. You're able to buy into anything too. So you got to watch that.
Right. Right. I also, one of the strategies that I learned with COVID in the very early weeks of COVID lockdown was to continually test whatever doom narrative I saw on a screen. So people are dropping dead in the street. The morgues are overflowing.
Mhm.
The hospitals are overflowing. Look at these numbers, right? And I would constantly test what the news was screaming at me against what I was seeing with my own two eyes. What
Correct.
I was
Yeah, they're telling
experiencing.
you that the hospitals are overflowing, and you bring someone to the hospital and the parking lot's empty.
Exactly. And in those early days, I actually had a lot of moles in the urgent cares and in the hospitals. I'd call them every week and say, "How's it looking?" And they were empty until the shots were rolled out. They were completely empty here in New York State. So that has been something I've actually used and I've deployed consistently post-COVID. So when everyone's saying there's going to be a famine, everyone's going to starve to death, we're going to have World War, all of these things. And we talk about, on this show, we talk about like bad things. I mean, we're going to talk with Ed Dowd on a coming financial collapse and a financial crisis. Like,
Yeah, I'm looking
bad
forward.
things are going to happen.
Yeah.
But when they happen, you'll know it. That's the key, right? Whether it's the zombie apocalypse, an alien invasion, a deadly worldwide pandemic, a famine, any doom and gloom that you think might be on the horizon, you really don't have to worry about it, because if it happens, when it happens, you'll know it. You'll know it when
you're going to die. Get over it. So
exactly. Exactly. So that's been really helpful to me, because there's so much fake news on social media and the screens. It's hard to process all of it.
Yeah, a lot of it's drama orientated. It's like, the next thing, kind of
Yeah.
very few people actually do anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
ideas matter, though. Ideas do
Mhm.
matter. Remember, with these personality cults, you got your cult and you got your counter cults too. Like,
Right.
arguably, there's a strong Democratic counter cult to Trump.
Sure.
It's like everything about him is evil, and they're hating him for all like the wrong reasons, at least from my perspective.
Right.
But,
Right.
so,
Exactly.
and it's very emotional and personality based, because you and I know that he's not really conservative. He's a moderate when it comes to domestic. He's not conservative or libertarian. He's not limited government. So like they're
Absolutely.
acting like he's like I don't know, Ron Paul or Thomas Massey.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think that when we exit the political cults and we begin, and when a critical mass of Americans, enough, doesn't have to be all, doesn't have to be 90%, just enough Americans shed the two-party political paradigm, I think we're going to see a lot of changes in this country. And I think that it's going to be exciting to watch. So I'm excited for that. Dr. Joe Sansone, thank you so much for being with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. His book, Psychopathic Authoritarianism, A Disease of the Soul. It is coming out soon. You can pre-order. Go to his Substack, which is Mind Matters and Everything Else, with Dr. Joe Sansone. And you're on Twitter as well, aren't you, Dr. Joe?
no, my account got hacked in March. No, I've been trying to get it back since March. I even filed an FBI complaint, a BBC complaint. No. So josephsansone.com is my Substack, and that's where you can get me. But,
Okay.
Elon Musk, if you're watching, can you help me out here?
Come on, Elon. What the heck? Anything else you want to get off your chest before I let you go?
No, Shannon, you're the best.
Oh, you're the best.
Say it to everybody. It doesn't mean it's not true. And I just encourage people, like, eventually it'd be nice if, the party structure kind of encourages this a little bit too. Like, they don't want you to cross party line and that kind of thing. Like, people need to be a little more independent in their thought patterns. It's okay to align with people with similar views, but don't compromise your values and think like, look, if you're actually a Christian, you shouldn't be supporting the Gaza and Holocaust. Like these are things that
No,
are obvious. Like you know what I
no.
mean? Don't compromise your values because you're buying into the political cult and the mass media program. And I
Yeah.
can give you 100 other examples. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah, Joe, that's something that's really been in my heart lately regarding what is happening in Gaza and to the Palestinians. And I've kind of resisted, again, going back to, I like to talk about things that I can verify, that where I have, expert witnesses and people who I can trust in terms of eyewitness. And it's such a highly political thing and a highly politicized type of thing that I haven't done a lot of it on my show. I've tweeted a couple things out, but
it's
I think
relevant though to the cult talk though, Shannon,
it
because
really is. Yeah.
arguably Trump could belong to this Zionist cult, or he's just being told what to do. I don't know because I mean his son and daughter both prayed at the day he got elected in 2016 at the grave of Rebbe Schneerson, who a lot of his followers thought was the Messiah. He
Insane.
died in 1992, and about
Yeah.
a month before Trump got elected this time, he went and prayed at his grave too. So I don't know if he belongs to this cult or he's just being blackmailed or whatever.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, at the same time, he's attacking the Pope and putting out memes of himself as Christ. So these are conflicts. Like I see a lot of
Blasphemy.
like people that identify as Christians support Trump. So it's like, okay, but this is like by all definitions blasphemy if you're religious. So it's like
Absolutely.
challenge like obvious things like that. That there's
I'm
just
telling
stuff
you.
all the way around. But I get it because if you take on that issue, you're going to be called names.
No, it's not that I'm afraid. I'll tell you what it is. It's that I know there's a
Well, you
lot of
may-
money. Well, no, I know that there's a lot of money behind the pro-Israel
Yeah, sure.
aspect, but I also know there's a lot of money behind the pro-Palestinian thing as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have a hard time knowing what's really happening in Gaza. And I so don't trust social media. And I so distrust what I see on screens that I feel like I would have to go to Gaza myself and I would have to talk to people myself in order to really discern what is
There's a
happening.
lot coming out, even the systematic rape of Palestinians.
I think you're right. For me, I think there's more and more coming out, more and more that's credible, that is pushing me in this direction of wanting to cover this more on my show.
Ugly. It is ugly.
It's ugly. I know it is. I know it is. And I need to cover it more. I think I need to cover it more. I
wasn't implying that. It was relative to the cult thing because honestly, this stuff is happening because of people's like apocalyptic, like cult like beliefs, whether they're Christian or Jewish. It's like these aren't rational. That's not how you guide your foreign policy.
No, it's
we just lost the war to Iran. I mean, this is pathetic.
Yeah, and we can see what happened in Gaza. I mean, it is a parking lot. They literally
Lebanon is starting to
in Lebanon, horrifying. Ollie Robin 9, I agree, war crimes. All right, Joe Sansone, I hope to have you again on soon. You keep up that great work down in Florida, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. You're the best.
Okay, you're the best too. And thank you guys for being with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. I appreciate all of you. Please support our sponsors, PCM and Associates, Shift Gold, our friends over at the Wellness Company, of course, Satellite Phone Store. Always use those promo codes JOY anytime you shop because you're going to get great discounts and you're also going to get a discount on shipping as well. So you guys are the best. We will be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.